In Matthew chapter 4, we see Jesus in the temptation, well, with the enemy, how he was baptized and immediately led out in the wilderness to be tempted, to be tested by the enemy. I love that in this Sermon on the Mount, the Lord teaches us to say, lead me not into temptation. That he did that for us. That's not a part of our lives. He was led into temptation for us. We are not led by God into temptation. Even James says, we're drawn away into temptation by our own lusts. And he preaches the kingdom. So he has victory over the temptations that were pretty grave temptations, same temptations in the garden, same temptations we face on such a serious level for Jesus. You know, they dealt with identity. If you are the Son of God. Adam, we've talked about how Adam and Eve, created in the image of God and beheld him in intimacy and were given such tremendous privilege and pleasure. They were given the authority over, let them have dominion. Let us make man in our image and let them have dominion. And you'll notice that in all of the descriptions of God in Genesis chapter 1, where he gives Adam and Eve dominion, he does not give them dominion over people. He gives them dominion over the fish and creatures of the sea, the creatures of the earth, the creatures that fly in the sky. And he gives them access to eat of every fruit-bearing tree. Everything that God created has seed within it, and he placed it under the dominion of Adam and Eve. Of course, in direct reflection, they were to be his image, his likeness, his representative, his ambassadors of the kingdom of heaven on earth. They answer to God. He has dominion over them, and they exercise that dominion in the earth. God would not usurp them. God would work with and through them. And the one who had previously been given great authority in heaven to call all of heaven into worship and got distracted by his authority and his power to influence the creatures of God, the heavenly host, into worship, and decided to look upon himself for what he was capable of doing and the beauty of himself, and thought, I will exalt myself above the Most High God. I will sit on the throne. I will rule. Why do I call people into worship unto God when I'm the one calling them? I'm the one. It's my music. It's my glorious beauty. It's my splendor. Forgetting that all of this was given to him, Lucifer defies God and is thrown down like lightning in a moment, and unfortunately had influenced the minds of 1/3 of God's heavenly host to believe that it was better to follow Lucifer than to come worship God. Why should they worship him? He distracted them. He disoriented them. He was able to convince them that in themselves and in him, there was great beauty and splendor and power because God had bestowed it upon them. And then he came to the beauty and splendor of humanity. Flecks of dust, frankly, on a speck of dust. When you look at the photographs from space that were taken as Hubble would go farther and farther and farther out, you cannot even you cannot even see our galaxy. You can't see our solar system. It's a speck of dust. Never mind if you look at our entire solar system, you cannot, if you look back, you can't, if you look back far enough, you cannot even see Earth. It's a speck of dust. Certainly when you look at Earth, you cannot even see the movement of people. We're specks of dust on a speck of dust, which is a speck of dust. And the Lord delights in making us his image, in knowing him. So it's important we think on these things so we can sort of get a healthier perspective of, who we are in this universe, who we are in this grand scheme of things called life, and that we wouldn't take so seriously, we wouldn't be struck so gravely with the struggles that we have on a daily basis or even in life. This is not to dwarf or to diminish what we feel. Our feelings are profound. And we just have to remember that it's just not about us, right? It's not about us. Could you imagine if all this were about us? You know what I mean? Even our jobs, we serve a company, we serve a community. It's not about us. We have the pleasure of being able to make an impact. What about our families? Do we make our families about us? Do we make this day about us? That's what Lucifer did. He made it about him, and he taught others to make it about them. And then he came to poison Adam and Eve. And he went for the most vulnerable. He went for Eve. And he just caused her to doubt that God was really with her and that God was really for her. If he were really for her, why would he withhold? Here God was giving them privilege. He was teaching them authority. He was teaching them responsibility. He understood that if I decide to define good and evil, well, then fancy is going to decide to define good and evil. And then Iris is going to decide to define good and evil. And then there's Carmen. What about how Carmen defines good and evil? And our ways of defining good and evil, well, they clash with each other. I think something's good. You think it's evil. You think that what I think is good is evil. Well, that has to be about me, right? And so it just causes conflict. But if we find out from the author of everything what's good and evil, what's the truth, then we all agree. And now we know what to embrace and what to deny. God had told Adam that to take upon himself to eat the fruit of that tree, that was evil. It was against them. It would kill them. Right? And the enemy comes to say, it's not evil. It's actually good. And now they have to decide whom to believe. Don't we find that in our family? Don't we find that in political conversations? Don't we find that in academic discussions or scientific discoveries? Don't we find, who's defining good and evil? Who's defining you? God declares that you're good enough for him to create, good enough to bear his image, good enough to send his son to die for it, to pay the price for it.